Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this. We often mistake force for strength. We look at the person who raises their voice, who demands attention, or who reacts instantly to every challenge, and we just assume they're in command. But true power rarely advertises itself in noise. Actually, the loudest person in the room is often the most vulnerable, pulled in every direction by external events they cannot control. Real strength is quiet. It lives in the brief, crucial moment between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. In that small space lies your freedom, your character, and the entire trajectory of your life. When you surrender control of your internal world to external circumstances, you literally hand over your freedom to whoever or whatever provokes you.
Historically, this concept is incredibly powerful. Consider the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who ruled over the most powerful empire in the ancient world. He didn't spend his nights contemplating how to conquer more territory, but how to conquer his own mind. Surrounding him were treacherous politicians, devastating plagues, war, and constant betrayal. Yet in his private journal, he wrote not of vengeance, but of patience. He reminded himself each morning that he would encounter the arrogant, the ungrateful, and the deceitful, but that none of them could harm his character unless he permitted it.
And this brilliantly illustrates a timeless reality. Marcus Aurelius understood a fundamental truth that modern neuroscience now confirms. When faced with a threat, whether a wild animal or just a hostile email from a colleague, the primitive parts of our brain trigger an immediate emotional reaction. The heart races, blood pressure rises, and the impulse to defend, attack, or retreat becomes overwhelming. Now, this biological mechanism kept our ancestors alive, but in the modern world, it often transforms minor inconveniences into major crises. When someone criticizes your work, cancels a plan at the last minute, or cuts you off in traffic, your brain senses a threat to your status or safety. Your natural instinct is to fire back, to defend your pride or to sink into resentment. But when you react instantly, you aren't acting, you're being acted upon. You become a puppet whose strings are pulled by the moods and flaws of other people. So the crucial point here is that the ancient Stoics recognized that we don't suffer from events themselves, but from the judgments we make about those events. Epictetus, who actually spent the early part of his life as a slave, understood this better than anyone. He realized that a master could chain his body, but could never control his thoughts unless he allowed it. He famously taught that if a person can make you angry, that person has become your master.
But how does this build into our daily habits? Just think of how much energy is spent every single day fighting battles that don't matter. We overthink a passing comment made by a friend. We replay an argument in our heads for hours after it's ended. We worry about financial storms that haven't yet arrived, or we grieve over opportunities that are long gone. In doing so, we suffer twice, once in our imagination and once in reality if the feared event ever happens at all.
As Seneca observed, we're more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The mind, left unguided, has a natural tendency to construct worst-case scenarios. It creates phantom enemies and catastrophic outcomes out of pure uncertainty. Learning to step back from these mental illusions isn't an easy task, but it is the absolutely crucial first real step towards self-mastery. Imagine a ship navigating a violent storm at sea. The ocean swells, the wind howls, and the waves crash over the deck. If the captain panics and abandons the wheel to scream at the sky, the ship will surely sink. The storm doesn't care about the captain's anger, nor will it lessen its fury because the crew feels victimized. The only variable that determines whether the ship survives is the captain's ability to remain calm and steer through the gale. You are the captain of your own mind, and life will inevitably send storms your way. You'll face unexpected job losses, heartbreaks, health scares, financial strains, and the quiet weight of loneliness. None of these challenges can be prevented entirely, but the emotional collapse that so often accompanies them, that is optional.
This incredible insight was eventually put to the ultimate test. During the Second World War, the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl was imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps. Stripped of his home, his career, his family, and his dignity, he observed how different people responded to unimaginable suffering. He noticed that those who survived weren't necessarily the physically strongest, but those who maintained an internal sense of meaning and self-control. Frankl famously wrote that everything can be taken from a human being but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Frankl's insight aligns precisely with the core teachings of Stoicism and modern cognitive psychology. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Yet, most people live their entire lives without ever entering that space, moving instantly from trigger to reaction without a single second of conscious thought. To build true emotional strength, you've got to learn to expand that gap between what happens to you and what you do about it. When an impulse arises, whether it's anger, anxiety, or jealousy, you don't need to fight it immediately. You simply need to observe it. Take a single deep breath and recognize the emotion as a physical sensation rather than an absolute truth. Psychologist Carl Jung pointed out that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Many of our emotional reactions are actually deep-seated patterns formed in childhood or through past traumas. So when someone questions your capability at work, it might trigger an old feeling of inadequacy that has absolutely nothing to do with the current moment. By becoming aware of these underlying patterns, you take away their power to govern your behavior.
Now, controlling your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. There's a profound difference between Stoic emotional mastery and just emotional coldness. You see, emotional suppression is like holding an inflated ball underwater. It takes immense energy, and eventually, that ball will violently break the surface. Mastery, on the other hand, is acknowledging the emotion, understanding its source, and choosing not to let it drive your actions. When you feel anger rising, acknowledge it. Tell yourself, I'm feeling anger right now, but I am not my anger. Anger is merely a temporary visitor passing through my consciousness. By separating your identity from the emotion, you create the distance needed to reason clearly. To compare these approaches in the real world, consider professional athletics, where high pressure reveals a person's true psychological foundation. In the final moments of a championship game, two athletes may possess identical physical skills, but the one who loses control of their emotions will almost always fail. The athlete who allows frustration over a bad referee call to consume them completely loses focus on the next play. The one who remains composed, accepting the bad call as just a static reality of the game, adapts immediately and wins. And the exact same dynamic plays out in daily life, especially in our relationships and careers. When a partner speaks to you in a moment of stress or frustration, responding with equal anger only escalates the conflict. It burns bridges that took years to build. But if you respond with calm, grounded awareness, you instantly diffuse the tension. You create an environment where reason can return to the conversation. This isn't some form of weakness or surrender. It's the ultimate display of dominance over yourself. It shows that your peace of mind is not for sale and that no one can trick you into acting against your own values. As the Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus noted, to be elevated above insults is the mark of a truly noble spirit. And in our modern, hyper-connected culture, this lesson is more critical than ever before. We live in an economy literally designed to manipulate our emotions for profit and attention. Social media algorithms are specifically calibrated to trigger outrage, envy, and anxiety, keeping us locked in a state of perpetual agitation. Every headline, comment section, and notification invites us to surrender our internal peace in exchange for temporary stimulation. In the face of this modern reality, if you don't actively guard your mind, the world will happily fill it with noise, outrage, and comparison. You'll find yourself constantly measuring your life against the highlight reels of strangers, feeling inadequate for reasons you can't quite define. You'll react to every cultural panic, every political argument, and every piece of digital drama, exhausting your mental reserves on things that have no bearing on your actual life. The Stoic solution to this digital chaos is radical simplicity. Focus strictly on what is within your direct sphere of influence, your thoughts, your intentions, your efforts, and your actions. Everything else, other people's opinions, the economy, the weather, the past, and even the outcome of your efforts, belongs to the realm of things you cannot control. Trying to control the uncontrollable is, for sure, the primary source of human misery. When you fully digest this distinction, a profound sense of relief washes over you. You realize that you don't need to have an opinion on everything. You don't need to correct every person who is wrong on the internet. You don't need to secure the approval of people who don't even know themselves. You're completely free to direct all your mental energy toward building a good, honorable, and effective life. Think about a moment when you lost your temper and said something you later regretted. In that moment of fury, it probably felt entirely justified. You felt an urgent need to make the other person understand your pain or admit their mistake. But once the emotional storm passed, you were left with the fallout, damaged trust, lingering regret, and the realization that your outburst changed absolutely nothing for the better.
Now, think about a moment when you were deeply provoked, but you chose to remain silent and composed. Remember the quiet dignity you felt afterward? Even if the situation was totally unfair, you walked away knowing that you remained the master of your conduct. That feeling of self-respect is vastly superior to the fleeting satisfaction of a harsh retort. Self-discipline isn't just about waking up early, working out, or eating healthy foods. True discipline is emotional discipline. It's the ability to feel fear and act with courage anyway. It's the ability to feel temptation and choose restraint. It's the ability to feel deep grief or disappointment without allowing those emotions to turn you bitter or cynical. Consider the story of a high-level executive who built a successful company over 2 decades, only to lose it during an economic downturn. When news of the collapse broke, his colleagues expected him to break down, blame the market, or retreat from public life in shame. Instead, he called his team together, thanked them for their years of dedication, and quietly began planning his next endeavor. When asked how he maintained such composure in the face of ruin, he answered simply that the market could take his money, his office, and his title, but it could not take his ability to start over with wisdom and integrity. He understood that his value was never tied to his external success, but to his internal resilience. He was a wealthy man not because of his bank account, but because he possessed a mind that could not be conquered by misfortune. This perspective isn't some innate talent reserved for a select few. It's a skill developed through daily practice. Every single inconvenience you encounter throughout the day is a training ground for your mind. A slow line at the grocery store, a delayed flight, a difficult conversation, or a broken appliance. These aren't interruptions to your peace. They're opportunities to practice patience and self-mastery. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" train yourself to ask, "What does a situation require of me?" Shift your perspective from victim to practitioner. When you view life's obstacles as raw material for your personal growth, nothing can truly set you back. Everything becomes fuel for the fire of your character. As Marcus Aurelius famously wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." A fire consumes everything you throw into it, turning obstacles into light and heat. A weak mind is extinguished by hardship, but a disciplined mind uses adversity to grow stronger and wiser. To practice this in your own life, start small. When you feel a sudden surge of impatience or irritation today, just pause for 3 seconds before speaking or acting. In those 3 seconds, remind yourself that your reaction won't fix the problem, but it can easily make it worse. Ask yourself if this issue will matter in 5 years, 5 months, or even 5 days. If you follow these practical steps, remember that most of the things that drain our emotional energy today will be completely forgotten by next week. Yet we treat them as life or death emergencies in the present moment. By developing a sense of perspective, you strip minor problems of their power to disrupt your peace. You begin to walk through life with a steady, unshakable presence that inspires confidence in others and provides clarity for yourself. Relationships, in particular, transform when you master your emotional responses. Most interpersonal conflicts aren't caused by deep differences in values, but by unmanaged emotional reactions. One person projects their stress onto another, the second person takes offense and retaliates, and a vicious cycle of defense and attack begins. When you break this cycle by remaining calm, you create a safe environment where real communication can happen. You listen to understand rather than to defend your ego. You hear the pain or anxiety behind someone else's harsh words, allowing you to respond with compassion rather than anger. This is the mark of true strength, not dominating others, but lifting them up through your own unshakable emotional stability. In the end, life will test you in ways you cannot predict or prevent. It will challenge your patience, your principles, and your endurance. It will offer you countless reasons to give in to despair, anger, or apathy.
But the ultimate truth remains. No external event has the power to destroy your peace unless you hand that power over yourself. The strongest person isn't the one who never feels pain, fear, or anger. The strongest person is the one who feels all of these things deeply, yet chooses to be guided by reason, virtue, and love. They are the anchor in the storm, the light in the dark, and the master of their own soul.
As you step back into the flow of your daily life, carry this truth with you. You cannot control the world around you, nor can you control the actions of other people, but you can always control your own mind. Protect your inner peace as your most valuable asset, for out of it flows everything that truly matters in human existence. The only question is, will you start today?